All right, we're back. Is our first episode of the new year?
Yes.
It is, yeah,
Yes.
because we filmed the other stuff before the new year hit.
Mm-hmm.
So happy New Year again. I think we said that on the last video too. Been talking to some clients recently. And they've had a lot of questions about the nutrition app, and Lauren's been taking care of a lot of that stuff and some really good questions. And to my knowledge, to this point, in reference to the app, I think it's been really, really good at giving you the steps necessary to keep you on a track of success over time. So I think it's a phenomenal tool. I wanted Lauren to clarify exactly what it is, what the benefits are, and how much she likes it.
Sure. So this was kind of in the works for a long time, trying to figure out something that would give people daily accountability without me being the naggy mom that I can be. And then we stumbled upon this app through a mutual friend, and I think it's going to be a game changer. So we have about 15-ish plus and counting people signed up right now, and we have all of our combine athletes on a separate program, but same ideas. So basically what we focus on the apps and the programs within those is creating positive habit changes. And I think that we took this approach because people think they sleep well. They think they eat enough protein, drink enough water, prioritize whole foods. And I got to be honest, with a lot of my meetings, people don't. And they also don't realize how bad they are at doing those basics. So when I created this program, it was to touch on all of those things that I see people struggle with all the time that don't realize they're struggling with it. So to make a long story short, every week or so, we focus on a new habit. Within those habits, we have daily lessons. It's kind of like a 3 to 5 minute read that I wrote that are all evidence-based. It's not nonsense. And it kind of teaches you the whys as they apply to those habits, right? So for example, this is kind of the one that I tell most people about. So if week 2 or whatever is, getting enough sleep, right? Spending 7 hours in your bed. The lessons are, why is sleep important? What happens when you're sleep deprived? How can you get better sleep? How do you create a sleep routine? What can affect you falling asleep? What are some natural remedies that can help get you to sleep? So those are some of the lessons that you would learn every day. And I think the general feedback right now is that it's helpful, and people are realizing, if they're honest with their check-ins each morning, that they are really bad at the things that they need to be good at, that they need to prioritize. And I think the goal, some of the things that you've been hearing, is that it's underwhelming at first. And that's the point, is that we are focusing on the basics. And here's the reality, like, you might get through a week of a sleep habit and you might be great at sleeping. And I think the takeaway from that is just that you're learning more about how sleep can affect you. So even though it's something that you might do really well at, there's still the whole educational component to it.
Yeah. And what role would you say, like something like sleep quality or duration of sleep or water consumption would play in fat loss? If the client is someone who wants to lose weight, wants to lose fat, and they're like, come on, like, don't talk to me about sleep, don't talk to me about drinking water.
Those are the foundations.
Sure.
They absolutely 100% are the foundations. So the way that we rolled out the program, right, for some of you who are on it right now, you're probably just getting through week 1. And that was pretty much just finding out your why. Like, why are you doing this? When I ask people that all the time in person, well, I want to lose 10 pounds. Yeah, but why? Why do you want to lose pounds? Like, what is it about that? Do you want to play with your kids? Do you have a hard time climbing stairs? Do you have a parent or a family member that struggles with obesity? Like, there's something deeper there that you need to dig a little bit to find, I think, sometimes. So finding your why was the big one, because that kind of sets the stage for why you're really doing this and to help keep you accountable and adherent to what the lessons are. But yeah, sleep and water and prioritizing whole foods, like, they seem like basic concepts, but those are the the foundations of any fat loss program.
Sure. And I think if I'm someone who's doing the app, I'm on the app, and I can't do those things, then what's the likelihood of success of me doing everything else?
Totally low. You have to master the basics. Like fat loss is actually kind of simple when you can figure out what works for you, and a lot of that boils down to the basics.
That's huge.
So look, any fat loss program, like you probably read this in like some of Lane's things, like they're not sexy, right? They're not the flashy get rich quick schemes like we talked about last time. It's the easy to manage behavior changes that don't feel restrictive, that make the biggest impact, and that you can do consistently, because ultimately it's all about adherence and what you can do for a long period of time and do pretty well with.
Yeah. So I made a video yesterday that I would go perfect with this, and hopefully will be out in the same newsletter. I believe it will be. But as you say that, I'm thinking like there's so many parallels to training, and something that's so huge is like if I can't convince you to sleep for an extra hour, I have no chance of getting you in a caloric deficit if fat loss is your goal. You know, if you won't do something that simple, if I can't get you to drink an extra glass of water per day, what's the likelihood that I'm going to get you to, over the course of a long time frame, get you in a caloric deficit that's necessary to get you to your fat loss goals? So if you can't do the little things, don't even worry about the big things yet. In terms of the parallel to training, the same things apply for like, hey, I'm here today to work out, and like over the next 3 weeks, give me your best shot and hit me with a truck every single time, because I want to change my life in 3 weeks. Well, it's not necessarily how it works, and that's not how we're going to get from point A to point B to point C to point D. So let's just get good at the basics, and the basics from a training perspective being just like the fundamental movement patterns and some aerobic work.
Sure.
So like I think that's something that's really important for clients to notice, especially those that have worked with me, and that the message that you've received from us over the years, from a training perspective, the same thing applies for nutrition. And I think that's why Lauren and I have managed to try to get our clients to do the opposing product throughout this whole process. It's like anybody who we've had upstairs who has bought into the smaller steps in training and the small steps in nutrition has seemed to go really far to this point.
Yeah.
So I think that's been really important, and it's the same message. And I think it's the only way to achieve long-term success.
Sure. And then you build on that. So, although most of the clients have started off and may find week 1 or week 2 underwhelming because they know a lot of that information, we continue to build over the 8 weeks. So we have a week that's completely dedicated to carbohydrates and what are going to be good fuel sources. Of course, there's like recipes and good like calorie saving swaps and suggestions in there. But we cut out some of the nonsense that's out there. So, is sugar bad for you, or artificial sweeteners bad for you? Like we talk a lot about that kind of stuff too. And we do the same with fats. We do the same with proteins. We talk about alcohol a little bit in there too when we get to the hydration week. So it's a lot of information, and there's some research articles that I threw in there that some of you may be interested in reading. And I think it's a lot about the education and finding out what works for you. And look, education's empowering. And when you're knowledgeable on a subject, you're confident and you go out there and you kick ass. And I think that plays to the success of any program too, right?
Yeah. Before we got on the video, I think Lauren said something really important, because we were talking about, I'm like, I don't know how much information is the game changer in something like this. And like we were talking to someone, you're giving them nutrition information, and when it's someone for fat loss, sometimes in my opinion it's just common sense is like, don't eat bad things and eat things that are good for you. And if you ask anybody, say like, what should you eat that's good for you that would assist in fat loss, and they'd be able to rattle off a bunch of things. Name things that would prevent you from fat loss, they'd be able to name a bunch of things. But Lauren's was like, actually it's the information that's probably the most important, because it dumbs it down to what actually matters.
Yeah,
and I think that was a good way to put
that. Yeah, even with going through in this Coach Catalyst app, like they have some sample programs that you can kind of pick from, and they had some good information, but there was a lot of stuff even on there that was wrong and totally off base. So that's why I completely overhauled it, and I wrote every article by myself 100% to make sure that it was the stuff that matters, the big rocks. I'm not going to tell you to cut out, artificial sweeteners, because that could be a game changer in someone who drinks coffee every day. That's going to help you get into a calorie deficit. Again, fat loss is the goal. It's a calorie deficit that matters. So there's some strategies in there to help with that, help assist with that, because there's just a lot of bad information out there. I try and clear it up.
Yeah.
I think you try and do the same thing.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I think this is, so take me through the start to finish of what this might look like if I'm someone who's interested in this. I just started. I'm on the app. How long am I doing it for? What can I expect over, I believe there's phase 1, phase 2?
This first one, the New Year Improved You is what we called it. It's an 8-week program. You get 56 lessons, daily lessons, right? It's divided in between about 7 weeks, 7 habits. And it's the everyday accountability. So you read the lesson every morning, you check whether you did the lesson from the day before. That helps me realize what you need help with. It helps you realize what you need help with. I reach out when I see people that are struggling or not responding. So I get the adherence percentages like right away. And that's when some of you may have already gotten messages from me that are saying, hey, I saw you struggled. You said no for this. Like, what's going on? How can I help you with that? Where are you struggling? So it's kind of just a no-brainer in terms of me being there when you need me, if that makes sense.
Sure. Now, not that any step matters besides the one that's directly in front of you, but after the duration of the app, the first program, then what?
Ooh, I am actually in the middle. As if I have time to do this at this point, but I'm in the middle of doing another 8 weeks. That's going to be a little more in depth, almost like a level 2. And hopefully at some point I'm going to do a level 3 just to continue to build on what you're learning, getting a little more in depth. So someone that may find some of this information is a little too easy, the basics, I think that's not necessarily the right mindset to have, but the level 2 program is going to build on that. Like, how do we burn calories? What's your basal metabolic rate? Things like that go quite a bit more in depth. So
that's awesome.
That's coming.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And I think, like you talk about with your programming, like you can't just go right to college. Like you got to start in elementary school, and then you got to go to middle school, and then high school. It's the same thing with nutrition and just positive behavior changes. So we're trying to build people up and empower them and educate them so that they can do this for a lifetime.
Totally. And yeah, I'm just as guilty as anybody in terms of wanting results fast and wanting to make things happen quickly.
Yeah.
I was like, but I've seen it way too many times in myself and way too many times in clients that they've wanted to go to what you would probably have in your level 3, your phase 3 program on the app. They want to do that right now.
Yeah.
And they're just not there yet.
Basics.
And they do a pretty good job of being there in a very short period of time, can't sustain the behaviors, drop right back off.
Sure. Well, and here's the thing, as someone who's a professional in this industry, I suck at drinking enough water. So that would be a very basic habit that I know I need to work on. So if I'm trying to get into a deficit and lose body fat, I know that that's something I need to work on to help me be successful. And I won't be if I don't fix that. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm in the same boat. Water.
Yeah.
And then trying to, as I mentioned in the video that hopefully will also be on this newsletter, also be someone who doesn't identify with the person who's willing to always eat the candy just because everyone expects me to.
Right.
That's my New Year's resolution.
I
don't eat the candy every time guy.
I just got a video of him that I'll probably add to this
I'm working on
somehow
it.
of him eating a muffin.
It's got to be a picture.
A mini muffin in one bite.
Language in that. So
mini
that
muffin
has to be
in
a
one
picture,
bite.
not a video. All right, let us know if you guys have any questions, anything pertaining to your programming for nutrition, the app, anything. You know how to reach us. So we'll see you next week.
Next week, yeah. Bye.
You can hit the button.